What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of the Wolverine Swag Show for the 2025 football season. It truly is right around the corner. The time I'm recording this, Sharon Moore is scheduled to talk at Big Ten Media Days in about an hour. It's the last day of Big Ten Media Days. Camp starts in a week and a half. It's here. Football season is here. Hall of Fame game in the NFL is a week from today. It is here. It is football season, and it is right around the corner, and we are about to get into camp, which is basically, in my opinion, when the season starts. But before we get into camp, today's episode is going to consist of my top 5 position battles going into fall camp, and there's a lot of interesting ones. These were my top 5. There's a few more, but these were the 5 that I really leveled in on important ones. We're not going to go into any particular order. There are a few that I think are bigger than others and more competitive than others, and I'll say that once we get into them. But for now, we're just no order. We're just going to go through them. Starting with the first position battle going into fall camp is running back 1. Obviously, Kalel Mullings, Donovan Edwards are gone. It's a new era on the backfield for Michigan. Obviously, you have Jordan Marshall, who, didn't play a whole lot last year, but obviously, in the bowl game, flashed a lot. And then you have the Alabama transfer Justice Haynes, who went for 79 carries last year with 450 yards and 7 touchdowns, but never saw the field as much as he liked, which is why he obviously ended up in Ann Arbor. So this competition, in my opinion, is going to be more important than people think, because when I first looked at this, I was just thinking to myself, listen, they're going to split carries. One may go on the opening drive in the field, but they're going to split carries. However, if you really dive into Michigan football's running back rooms since 21, ever since this kind of this stretch started, there's always been 2 guys, really. There's always been 2 big name guys. However, one has always been above the other one. If you look at 21, it was Hassan and Corum, 2 big guys, but Hassan was above him. If you look at 22, Dono and Blake. Blake was above him. 23, same thing. 24, Dono and Kalel, but Kalel was that number 1 guy. There was always going to be that go-to bread and butter guy, that just kind of that starter. So even though that both these guys are going to get reps, obviously, there's still going to be, this competition is still big because, if history repeats itself, which it's gonna, there's going to be one of them is going to be, above the other one. So that's why I'm really interested, to see this position battle. Obviously, Jordan, like I said a few minutes ago, he didn't play much last year, but last year in the bowl game, he 31 carries, 120 yards last year, 100 yards in the Bama game. So, we've seen flashes from him. We've seen Justice, freak athlete. So this is going to be a very juicy position battle, and I think it's more important than what people might be thinking when they say, oh, they're just going to split carries and blah, blah, blah. There's going to be one, like in previous years, that's above the other one. Mark my words. Okay, moving on to the second position battle. I got tight end 1. The contenders for this job, in my opinion, are Hogan Hansen, Marlon Klein, are the 2 main guys, and then I'll throw in Zach Marshall and Jalen Hoffman in as well. All had a little playing time last season. Hogan and Marlon did play versus Ohio State when Colston went down. Obviously, the week before, didn't play in that game. They both had a few catches for first downs. Zach has not played really at all. Jalen has not played either, but he had a great spring. Obviously, a great spring game. We all saw. He's been talked about as Strone. He's been highly talked about by the coaching staff. Marlon Klein is kind of known as the freak athlete in the group. And in my opinion, I think Hogan is the best, Loveland comparison, receiving tight end, kind of that build. So this is going to be interesting as well, because you got such big shoes to fill. Really, listen, the last time Michigan kind of had this situation at tight end was a long time ago. Obviously in 21, You had Eric Hall, you had Luke Schoonmaker, experience. Going into that season, you had a guy. 22, Luke Schoonmaker, you had a guy, experience. Keith Colson came on at the end of that year. In 23, it was Loveland, you had a guy. Same with last year. So this is the first, tight end room in a while that's inexperienced, that has not played much at all, but with a few guys, really all of them, that are very highly talked about, that are very talented, that are very athletic, and that we've seen some sparks when they happen on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this battle. I'd say the top two guys are obviously Hogan and Marlin, but Zach has been talked about a lot, and then obviously, like I said, Jalen had a great spring game. So it's going to be interesting to see this battle for the tight ends going into fall camp. All right, moving on to the third position battle heading into fall camp. I have the second defensive tackle. And I think this battle is between Damon Payne, transfer from Alabama, Trey Williams, transfer from Clemson, and then Trey Pierce and Ike Awana, who were both rotational players in the Michigan defense last year. Damon had, let's some stats real quick. Damon had 14 tackles last season with Bama. Trey Williams had 14 tackles and 2 sacks last season with Clemson. He's huge, obviously. You guys know. Trey Williams is huge. Reminds me a lot of Kenneth Grant with that size and kind of athletic gift. And then, like I said, Ike and Trey Pierce were both rotational guys last season. I think the defensive line, from a starting standpoint, is pretty set with the other three guys. You got Derek Moore, TJ Guy at the ends, and then Rashawn Benny in the middle as solidified. Those three, I think they've solidified themselves as starters. But it's going to be interesting to see because you need 4 guys on the defensive line, and I think this battle is going to come down to them. Damon Payne and Trey Williams are both guys, kind of like Justice in the running back room, that they played at their former schools but didn't necessarily get great playing time. And then, Trey Pierce and Ike obviously were behind Mason and Kenneth. So it's going to be interesting to see who takes that spot. I think there's a lot seeing from last year. I think obviously Wink loves to rotate, so listen, all of these guys are going to play. That's defensive. All of these guys are going to play. However, like I said with the running backs, both of them are going to play, but there's going to be that bread and butter guy. Not as much with the running backs. I think that's why it's not as important as a battle, because they're all going to play. However, there's going to be a starter, and then there's going to be a backup. So I think it's going to be interesting to see who takes the field week 1, and that's going to be a good battle heading into camp. Coach Louis Pasito has done a great job, obviously, last year going into year 2, and it's going to be an interesting battle to see. All right, moving on to 4, and I think this might be the most important one, to be honest, is the left tackle battle. Now listen, I think there's technically other battles with the rest of the offensive line. I think, obviously Sharon said Greg Crippen, Gio El-Hadi, and Andrew Sprague have kind of solidified themselves as starters. However, I think this is the big battle. I think Nathan Efobi will be starting at guard. I think that's a battle too, but I think he'll be taking that spot. Nathan Efobi at guard. So left tackle, and I think the candidates in this battle are Evan Link, starter last year, and the 5-star freshman Andrew Babalola. Now listen, like you all know, I'm just repeating everything you know, kind of as a recap. Evan Link struggled last year mightily. He struggled big time, especially in pass protection. He got better as the year went on, Ohio State game, Bama game, but he still struggled with an offensive line that struggled big for the most part last season. And then you got Andrew Babalola, who's a 5-star recruit, 6'6", 300, but true freshman, Big Ten ball, Oklahoma week 2, it's not the same as high school. So I think this battle is the most intriguing by far, in my opinion. You've got kind of two polar opposite people. One struggled up, as a veteran type guy, but struggled last season, whereas one is a 5-star recruit, big, talented, but he's a freshman, and Big Ten football is different. So this, in my opinion, is the most intriguing position battle that Michigan has. To be honest, I think it's going to be interesting to see who's taking first team reps as we get into fall camp. Who's kind of in front. Sharon really. This goes back to Harbaugh. They just really don't share anything. So it's going to be interesting to see, what goes on with this. But I honestly, I think this is the most important one too. Because if Michigan offense wants to be successful, you guys know this. You gotta have a good offensive line. That's where it starts. The big boys up front. And yes, Chip Lindsey, new offense, blah blah blah. Gonna pass that more. Michigan's bread and butter, as long as Sharon's there, as long as the smash culture is there, is going to be run the damn ball. It's going to be that. I don't care. You could have Jeremiah Smith at wide out with Bryce Underwood. I don't care. Michigan's bread and butter, Michigan's identity is going to be to run the damn ball. And to do that, you got to have a good offensive line. Now, tackle isn't as important to run the ball than, say a guard, most people would say, but I think it's still vitally important that the offensive line is better than it was last year. I think part of the reason the offense struggled so much last season was Michigan, obviously Davis Warren wasn't the best, couldn't throw the ball really, and then if you want to go back to your bread and butter, the offensive line just struggled. Yes, you could say they were stacking the box, but I guess the whole point of this is offensive line is very important for Michigan. It's got to be better than last year, and this is a very intriguing battle. I think right now as it sits, it's going to be Greg Crippen at center, Giovanni El-Hadi at left guard, Nathan Efobi at right guard, Andrew Sprague at right tackle, and then left tackle. Bang. All right, moving on to our final position battle for the episode. For two spots in the secondary, I think it's Shamari Earls, Mason Curtis, and TJ Metcalf will be fighting for those. Michigan traditionally runs a 4-2-5, which means 5 guys in the secondary. I think Brandon Hillman, Jair Hill, Zeke Berry have solidified themselves as 3 of those guys. Braden being one of the safeties. Zeke could play outside or inside. Same with Jair, but Jair most likely play inside. I think each of these guys, Shamari, Mason, and TJ, could play safety, nickel, or corner. I think it's just 3 guys for 2 spots. Obviously, Mason Curtis is the only guy that was here last year. Kind of came on in that Illinois game, and it's the first time I have ever seen him play, heard of him, and then he really played throughout the rest of the season, played well. TJ Metcalf is obviously the cousin of DK Metcalf, and he was at Arkansas last year and put up big numbers: 52 tackles, 3 interceptions, 7 pass breakups. He's a big name. Obviously his brother Tevis, but TJ's kind of the big name, a big family line, and he was a big name guy in the portal last year. And then obviously Shamari Earls, 4-star. And I've been watching Michigan football for a long time. I've been covering it, on Instagram for a long time. I don't think I've ever seen, ever. I would say player, but I'll go with freshman just to, maybe put it under a little bit. I don't think I've ever seen a guy, 100% a freshman. I don't even know if I've ever seen a player as talked about and as praised as Shamari Earls has been by every single person in the building. Dude, you had Lou Espis, you had guys that have no affiliation with, obviously, Ron Bellamy, he's going up against him every day in practice. Lamar Morgan, it's his player, position group. But you had, the most random, J.B. Brown, the special, Brian Jean Mary, the line, everyone was talking about this guy once in their spring ball presser. So talked about, so hyped up, so everyone. And I think he could have a Will Johnson type freshman year. I'm not saying he's gonna. I think it will probably be Mason Curtis and TJ Metcalf, but this guy is, the same with Will. Will insert beginning of his freshman year. I think he's gonna have a role, but I think at the end of the day, it's these three guys for the last two secondary spots. And again, like I said, Wink loves to rotate. Everyone's gonna play more than these guys are gonna play. However, I think these are the big names for the last two spots in the secondary, and I'm just excited to see how it plays out because again, Shamari Rolls, I have never seen a guy so talked about more than he. I mean, everybody, 4-star, talented, foot from Georgia. Again, T.J. Metcalf, bloodline with DK Metcalf, big time player at Arkansas, and then Mason Curtis played kind of all over, played safety, played nickel. So I think if I had to guess, I would say it's going to be Brandon Hellman and Mason Curtis at the safety spots, Zeke and the nickel, and then Jair Hill and T.J. Metcalf outside. But again, it could be Zeke and Jair outside, T.J. in the middle, or T.J. at safety, Mason in the middle. It depends. So 3 guys for those 2 spots in the secondary, and yeah. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Wolverine Swag Show. Those are my top 5 position battles going to fall camp. Guys, like I said earlier, man, it's here. Like, Sharon Moore, what time is it? 1:34? He didn't talk already, did he? I think he's talking at like 2 Eastern time. It's here. Big Ten Media Days are right now. Fall camp is starting in literally 10 days. Like, the season is here. Michigan football is around like 35 days away. It's here. We're going to be covering stuff on Instagram, Twitter, or X, whatever. The Swag Show right here. It's going to start coming into weekly episodes because there's going to be stuff to talk about. And football season is here. So thank you guys for watching this week's episode of the Wolverine Swag Show. Make sure to follow the Instagram, follow the podcast, turn notifications on. We haven't posted the podcast a lot. There's just not much stuff to talk about, obviously, but now there is because fall camp is right here. We're going to be posting updates daily in camp, and football season is here. Like I said 10 million times. Okay, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.